You're listening to the Productive Therapist Podcast, the world's greatest and most brilliant resource for busy therapists who'd rather be laying on a beach in Hawaii. Each episode is packed with simple tips and inspiring insights from the Productive Therapist team to help you grow your practice and have fun doing it. So without further ado, let's help you get more done and have more fun.
Hello and welcome back to the Productive Therapist Podcast. You are awesome. Thanks for being here. Today I had a really interesting conversation with a new connection from LinkedIn. Her name is Candice Thompson. She's an LMFT in California and Oregon, and she considers herself a well-rounded generalist with 20 years of experience in the field of mental health and 15 practicing psychotherapy. She's a mental health speaker for organizations in the Silicon Valley, a board member, supervisor, adjunct faculty lecturer, and podcast host. She's been in private practice for 11 years, and she's very vocal on LinkedIn about adequate pay for therapists and career sustainability. I think we had a very interesting and fun conversation, and I hope you enjoy listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a like and a review. If you've been enjoying this podcast, it would be amazing for you to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That would just mean the world and get the message out to more and more therapists who are awesome, just like you.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is so wonderful. I think this is the first time that I've had a guest on the show that I met for the first time on LinkedIn. So that's pretty fun.
That's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I know before we hit record, we were talking about our various adventures on LinkedIn and mostly good outcomes of that. It's been mostly fun. Would you say that's true?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, my story, if you want me to just jump into it on
Yes, please.
LinkedIn, it happened really organically because someone told me it was probably a good idea to have LinkedIn as a therapist. And I do a lot of speaking engagements. So something I learned right away was that you needed 500 plus to look like a credible, professional. So that was my only goal with LinkedIn is like, what 500 people can I, find from throughout my life history? And that was it. And then, started posting a few things, took a course, took it with a grain of salt, but then started to just share my ideas on mental health tech, just the things that were ruffling my feathers. And I got, kind of back to back 6 viral posts. And so that became a whole life of its own. And it's been great.
Yeah.
And so I actually really genuinely like having these conversations and creating relationships with the people that I most frequently engage with on there because it feels more real when I'm celebrating someone's history or, an accomplishment and I've actually had a personal connection with them.
Actual social networking. Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
So tell me a
Yes.
little bit more about what kind of prompted and inspired you to talk about mental health tech and some of the things that you were noticing in our industry, because I connected with you partially because I really was enjoying your posts and finding them insightful and interesting. And it sounds like you kind of it happened organically or naturally.
Yeah, a few things were happening in my life when I joined LinkedIn that I think really contributed. One of them was I was talking with a dad at my daughter's preschool and just, what do you do for work? And he said, I'm in healthcare. And I was like, oh, I'm a therapist. Tell me more. What do you do? And he goes into share that he just founded a mental health company. And so, of course, I'm very interested. And a long story short, basically, someone with a business background with no education in mental health, creating a peer to peer support, like employee assistance program.
Okay.
And I did a lot of digging and looking into it, and I was just aghast that it's marketed as mental health. There's no mental health employees. And so I think some of this just really started happening organically. I was also seeing a coach at the time who I felt like was doing therapy, and I've done lots of therapy in my life and just wanted to try it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, started researching this doesn't feel right. Should she be saying these things and acting like a therapist? Turns out that is practicing without a license. So there
Sure.
was just things that I was learning. And then there was this platform. I think I saw Megan Corner speak about some of the similar stuff and like big mental health tech platforms.
Right.
And I agreed with a lot of that content. And then something else had happened, and I just started talking about it. And it got a lot of traction. And it almost felt, I don't know if you've ever heard like authors talk about, and it felt outside of myself, like an idea just plopped into my brain. But really, my first, few goes with LinkedIn felt like that. Like an idea struck me. I was like, I have to write this, like
Yes.
whether better help or, I think my first viral post was did you know that the education and, like, practice time to become a dentist is the same, if not less than the time to become a licensed psychotherapist.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so that stuff really felt so organic and natural and things that I've been really passionate about, and it's created a life of its own, and now I have a little following and opportunities that have opened up, and, yeah, I like it. My whole idea is to encourage therapists for sustainable pay and a
Right.
career that's gonna last, and to try to be a voice around all the companies that I feel like are having their hands in our cookie jars, and, yeah, hopefully that will contribute to change.
So glad that that's getting some traction and that you like you didn't say this word, but you kind of like connected with the muse or like something, some
Mhm.
inspiration hit, and you're like, yeah, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm observing, and this is like actually connects with something that you're passionate about. And I think those conversations right now are so interesting and important too, right? Because like there's a lot changing just in the time that you and I have
Yes.
been therapists in, in this century, in this decade, in these decades, like
Yes.
a lot is changing
A
and
lot.
nobody really knows what it's going to look like in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years.
That's right.
But I guarantee you it's going to look different, whether it's, like you said, big therapy tech, AI, all these things converging to like cause us to ask existential questions and try to figure out like what's the path forward for humanity and for mental health professionals. It's I think it's I kind of think it's more fun than scary, but it is a little bit of both.
Hmm. Yeah, and I tend to be a little old school. So my hope would be that it doesn't look that different. In
Mm-hmm.
terms of psychotherapy, right, that will always have spaces, whether offices or virtual, that feel like a safe container, that we're always providing that client-centered approach, and that regardless of what other tech comes in and out, a lot of it doesn't seem like it affects the work that I do, the meaningful, impactful work. And so that's what I hope therapists can really focus on, is all of that stuff kind of sounds like noise to me. And the people that I hear promoting it the most are the ones that are selling it.
Yeah,
Constantly, it's like, "Oh, the therapists that don't use." Well, there's a quote recently, it was a professor, it was like, "If therapy won't replace, or AI won't replace therapy, but therapists that don't use AI, like, will be weeded out," or something, and I just think, "Oh, that's kinda
sure.
silly," because AI
Mm-hmm.
doesn't, I don't, confer real quick with ChatGPT before I make an analysis or ask someone an insightful question. That those are skills that I have. And I just had this conversation with a client this week. I'm going to make mistakes, just like people in their world are going to make mistakes, and that's an opportunity for us to work through that and have conflict resolution and to experience someone safe to have
Mm-hmm.
that conversation with. And so I really hope that the purity of therapy stays.
I like that. I like that you're old school. That's good. We need that too. We need to put on some vinyl records and get out our fountain pens and do like therapy the way it was invented.
I still take notes on paper.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
still have a paper calendar,
Right.
but that works for me, and no judgment to those who, have EHRs.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredibly helpful to be clear on what tasks and projects and things that humans will always be hopefully better than
Yes.
any other tool or robot or computer
Yes.
software, right?
That's
And then
right.
also acknowledge how these tools can help us do all kinds of things in life and in our work. So I think to me it's a yes and not everybody thinks that, which is okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the integration is fine as long as we're not losing our direction as therapists.
Hmm.
And that's the fear that I have when I look at large companies that are taking over and becoming these mental health platforms. If those companies aren't rooted in, clinical insights and bound by law and ethics, then the clinicians working underneath them are always going to be at the whim of the big companies. And that's the fears, like what happens with the data and the personal information of our clients. And at the end of the day, we're liable for that. underneath our licenses. So, yeah, I think both can coexist, but I think clinicians need to be driving the conversation. And that's what seems backwards right now.
Yeah, I think those are important conversations. I think we can transition into the thing that we agreed to talk about in the
Yeah,
context of this, right?
sure.
Because we're going to talk a little bit about branding and promotion and putting yourself out there,
Hmm.
and maybe we can integrate that into what that's going to look like now and in the future with this context of the things that we're talking about. But tell me a little bit about what you've noticed with therapists. Why do we struggle with that? Specifically, branding, promoting ourselves, like really getting those things done that are important.
Yes. My concise story is when we're going through grad school, that's not a part of the education. And when we're getting our hours, we're doing it for free or at very low cost. And so there's not a natural transition point unless you got your hours in a private practice. There's not this transition point of, oh, and now this is how you go and build a business and what kind of money you should be asking for. And so it does make sense to me why individuals see something like BetterHelp and they're like, well, I've been paying minimum wage for the last, 5 years trying to get a license. 40 bucks an hour sounds great.
Hmm.
And so I think that's where therapists are just at a disadvantage. And I think the conversation we talked about is so coaches who don't have the same education, they don't have regulations, they're not supposed to be dipping their hands into psychotherapy. They often come from business backgrounds. So you often have people that came from the tech world that understand the lingo who then get into this self help realm and
Hmm.
they know what their company was willing to pay for one of those speakers to come in. They know, what executives are paying for their executive coaches. They're versed in the language and the background tech. And so that's where I actually have seen coaches as doing better at that piece. I don't think that coaches should take over for us. I think that therapists can actually just stop and learn from, okay, how are those individuals positioning themselves and how can we fill in the gap so that therapists can position ourselves with all the education and license and certifications that we have that far outweigh the non-clinical coach and be doing, the messaging and the branding and the pricing that actually meets our needs.
That's an interesting observation that I actually never thought of, that a lot of coaches and consultants get there by learning from other coaches and consultants who
Yes.
by nature of their work tend to be more business oriented, whereas therapists are always trained by therapists
Yes.
who, maybe this will change someday, but are not business minded by nature. That is so interesting. And it
Yes.
definitely makes sense. So it comes natural to those folks who don't have our background. Yeah. Do you
Exactly.
think do you think that will be different for, like, let's say your kids or my kids if they decided to become therapists because they've grown up with, a TikTok and whatnot? Do you think they will like have a little bit of a leg up from us?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the work that I'm doing. I'm putting together actually a course right now for therapists around private practice and answering some of those things that like no one, I just asked people at the time. This was before Google was even as good as it is today. I started my
Sure.
practice 14 years ago. So you just ask, "Oh, what did you do? How does this work? What paperwork do I need to fill out for? Oh, call the IRS." And so trying to put that together more cohesively. I think we're really at a crossroads right now where either our kids are going to come into this world where it's only big platforms and Headway and
Mhm.
Talkspace or whatever, and therapy is not going to be as desirable of an industry because you're not going to make as much and there's going to be a lot of burnout. Or we're going to fight like hell and therapists are going to step up and learn how to market ourselves. So I am of the hope that we will step up and through, encouragement conversations like this. I think that some of what I do on LinkedIn is just kind of say, okay, here's something I did to figure out. It's not that everyone needs to follow those steps, but at least it creates a narrative of what's possible because that is what I did with coaches when I first started LinkedIn is I saw things they were doing and I felt myself have jealousy. And I turned that jealousy into action of like, oh, she did that. And I would go, what's LinkedIn is so great because you could see everyone's history. So I'd go to someone's website, I'm like, oh, they, communications major, they worked for this company for a while. Oh, and now they have a self employed coaching business. That's interesting. Okay, well, I've got this huge 20 years in mental health. So I'm going to go do that thing that they're trying to do and do it within the realms of mental health. And so that's been a really fun game for me to
That's a
play.
that's a good mindset shift to take inspiration from those folks and realize that you don't need permission to do some of those same things,
That's right.
right? Yeah,
That's right.
that's fantastic. Yeah. It's interesting. I think it seems to me a lot of therapists have unique personality characteristics, right? Because something drew us to this work, whether we're sort of caregivers or we're introverted or we're more comfortable
Mm.
with one-on-one conversations, whatever that might be. Certainly true for me. And so I found that I actually kind of fell in love with marketing. You said business of therapy is your jam. I'm the same way. And
Yeah.
but I learned that I could do marketing even as an introvert. And
Hmm.
some of that was digital marketing, whether it was writing or newsletters all the way back in the day up until now.
Yeah.
But what I found with starting a group practice was that it actually was easier for me, and it's still easier for me to promote other people, to
Hmm.
say, I have this amazing therapist on my team. Her name is Monica, and she works with eating disorders and youth, and she's just the absolute best. Let me tell you about Monica, right? So I
Hmm.
still to this day find it easier to talk about my friends and colleagues and
Sure.
employees
Yeah.
than myself. And I don't think
Yeah.
that will change. But what do you think could help therapists who might be more introverted, less you know, confident or bold, let's say, by nature?
Yeah.
What could help them kind of step out and, sort of own some of that a little bit more?
I think that it makes sense if you're uncomfortable promoting yourself, but instead to think about promoting, like, what's the product that you're selling? And
Mm-hmm.
this is something I worked with an associate recently on. She was really uncomfortable with, like, the money involved in therapy. And even, after someone feels like, okay, I've done the work, but she sees how far they still need to go. It's realizing we have the antidote. And to really believe that is, I know that what I'm offering provides someone freedom that can change their life to be more healthy, to be more productive, to be without the ailments or symptoms that have been constraining them for a long time, or the thought patterns that have been holding them back. And so it doesn't have to be so much, look at me, I'm the best, but it can be, look at this service, look how great that this is, or this intervention, and really putting that out there and believing in the work the same way that oncologists, right, that they provide different treatments to provide that care and to free someone of cancer and to give them longevity of life. It's believing in what we're
Mm-hmm.
actually doing behind closed doors with our clients.
So you're promoting therapy and the outcomes that therapy provides, and then how you as a provider kind of make that even better. So
That's right.
there's some layers to that, right?
Yeah, that's
Because
right. And I
mhm,
think that takes individuals time to figure out, what is my specialty? What is my
definitely.
theological, background? And I think it's okay for the newer therapist. We all have stages of development, so, like, being comfortable in that stage. You're finding me at, 16 years into the field. So the way I talk and think today is different than I probably, for sure different. I remember starting, and I've always looked younger than I am, trying to dress older and, really fake it till you make it. And so some of that changes when you gain that confidence of, like, oh, I don't have to fake it. I'm actually doing the thing and know
For
what I'm
sure.
talking about.
Yeah, I think it took me so long to get my confidence as a therapist. I was wobbly for many years.
Sure.
And for me, it was really spending about 6 years working in residential treatment for adolescents,
Mm.
where where you have to find your legs and you have to find your confidence in order to do that
Mhm.
work and to show up and actually be helpful. And that was where I discovered that that was what I wanted to do with my private practice as well,
Yeah.
is work with adolescents, and it ended up being wonderful and helped me develop a specialty, but also
Mhm.
realize I'm uniquely gifted at
That's right.
working with teens and families.
Yeah.
And then eventually I could say, like, talking to somebody on the phone, I think I'm a really good match for you because
Mhm.
I have this experience and this is what I love to do and this is how I
Mhm.
help, and communicate those things, and then translate that to, the website, to the email newsletter, to the courses and products that I would create later on.
Right.
It just took me a while, but I'm glad that I got there.
Yeah. Yeah. And so much of what you're talking about is that intuitive piece. And I don't know, so much of what I see is what's the measurable, scalable outcomes? And therapy sometimes gets whittled down to, like the 8-week programs. And so much of what therapy actually is I think it's a craft. And
Hmm.
we'll all come to the table with our giftings, and we should do all of our work to not, include our shadow sides in the therapy room, but to really use, how do I see the situation? What tools feel natural to me? What are the language that feels really natural to me? I'm an integrated, insight oriented therapist because I like to just do what feels good in the moment. Sometimes, what in the moment, DBT is the right thing that I'm going to pull from, or family systems, or it's going to be a really concrete CBT thing. But I always want to zoom back to how do I see the situation? How can I get there? And that's an art form that gets developed.
Trusting your instincts and your intuition
Exactly.
and the
Yes.
unique way that you do therapy, because every therapist is different.
That's
And
right.
even 2 DBT therapists or 10 DBT therapists will
That's
do
right.
things somewhat differently, even if they're doing like a standardized treatment protocol, right? Yeah.
That's right. And if they're not, I think that's the risk of
Hmm.
people saying, "Oh, a computer could do this," right? If it's
Sure.
standardized, then why
Sure.
couldn't AI do it? And that should be
Hmm.
the pushback is it's not standardized. Relationship attachment, that's a unique thing that happens in real time. Someone's gaining trust and there's humor that's going to be involved, depending
Hmm.
on your personality. I know that can be for
Yeah.
me and different things that a computer hopefully can't replicate. Although, ChatGPT, I just had a client this week come in who was using ChatGPT all week as like, a support system. And
Sure.
I read through some of the messages and I was like, oh wow,
Oh, really?
it just spoke so well. And I guess the person said, the things that they were looking for, and it just designed it to like speak in a very sacred, holy way about what they were going through. And I was like, oh man, that's
Isn't
good.
that fascinating? Yeah.
That's
I
dangerously
mean, the
good.
question there too is like, will people interacting with AI chatbots or whatever form the AI takes, will they experience, like, even when it's not real human empathy, because
Mhm.
that computer program has not had life experiences like you and I have.
No,
So if it
yeah.
says, I know what that must feel like, or tries to relate in some way,
Uh-huh.
it's not going to be real. But will we be able to experience it as real empathy or like impactful? That's an interesting question. Um,
Yeah. I heard something recently and I haven't done the research around it, but it said something like online you can't experience the same type of oxytocin that you can
is that right?
from, real person to person
Hmm.
relationship. Again, it's not something I've researched, but I would love for those things to be true,
Yeah.
that there's something uniquely inherent about being human and the energy. There's so much about being humans that we don't totally understand and the energy that we
Right.
give off
Yeah.
and the computers don't have any of those elements.
Those are going to be worthwhile things to investigate and test. There are clinical trials
Yeah.
going on. I was reading one recently that I've been talking about just because it's fascinating, where people were given, there was a control group, and then there was the other group was given unfettered access to therapy bot, which was like
Mm.
a bot that was trained over quite a number of years actually to provide some manualized treatments, and then they measured the outcomes, and the interesting things that came out of that, and this is from Dartmouth if people want to look it up, and it was just published about a month ago or so. The interesting thing was that many of the people enjoyed it, and they actually
Mm.
viewed this chatbot as sort of a friend of kind.
Right.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
interestingly enough, they actually had a significant reduction in depressive symptoms, anxiety, and some disordered eating behaviors. So it seemed to be helpful and effective. So, yeah, fascinating information.
It is fascinating stuff. I'm curious. Now, I believe that it can be effective in some ways. I also think that it's so odd that we've gotten to this point so quickly without any regulation and all the dangers
Hmm.
that can take place. Not to mention what happens to that information. Where does it go and who's using it
Sure.
and why? But to remove the human element, so people are feeling relief, but they're also not getting the same, I would imagine, like reconstructed neurological experience as you would with having a secure attachment figure in a human therapist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I
You're
don't
never
know.
going to be sending
I
that
mean,
AI chatbot your wedding announcement.
right? Can you imagine?
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's so fascinating. So I have a question for you along the
Yeah.
lines of what we were talking about before with the branding and promotion. You mentioned that you were talking to an associate therapist, I don't know if you're the supervisor or it's
Hmm.
a different kind of relationship. But what would your advice be to a young up and coming therapist that, let's say, they're going to start their private practice in 1 or 2 years? Because there's a couple different ways you could go with all the things that we're talking about, right? So you could be like, I'm an old school traditional therapist. I believe that it's the relationship between two humans that is provides the healing and the emotionally corrective experiences and all this. So like real human therapy. Like that's my brand, right? Or then there's another therapist that might choose to say like I'm a cutting edge therapist that uses the best, treatment modalities and all this amazing AI stuff. I don't know. What would you say to that person?
I would say that it's really important to first to stick with your licensing board and where they're at the moment, because I
Mhm.
think some of these cutting edge things might not be adopted by your licensing board, and that's
It's a
real.
pragmatic thing for a clinical supervisor to say. Good, I like it.
Absolutely, right? And so I get the allure, but
Mhm.
also, right, part of this is that tech companies are choosing to construct things that are outside of the scope. And, they're not hand in hand working with the BBS, or at least in California, right? The Board of Behavioral Sciences, or, the legal teams to figure this stuff
Right.
out. So I think being cautious and doing what feels right to you. If you're a tech person,
Mhm.
making sure too that whatever you're implementing, it's in the best interest of the client, not because that feels really cool to
Sure.
you, right? Like what
Mhm.
is actually finding them relief, having good markers for yourself to see, is that actually helping someone? Is it distracting? What I hear a lot these days too, that seems fairly new, is having people like complete surveys after the session or in between the session. And I just always wonder, because personally, I would hate that as a client. I would hate
Mhm.
that. It would feel so impersonal to log off or walk out of my, therapist office and then to have this like non-personal experience, or through the week to be getting emails to fill out how I feel. To me, I would not like that. And maybe some people would, but being really conscious that, is this what you're doing because an article said it was good, or because your clients actually say, oh, that was helpful to me? And if they say that was a drag, to take that seriously and
Yeah.
to be able to, yeah, be flexible as you're implementing something new.
Those are some really good points. Yeah. With so many of these things, the legal and ethical issues, we have to like stop and consider them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's what's wild about this. As a therapist, what was drilled in me the most was the law and ethics and the boundaries of our role. And so to see
Yeah.
a lot of these new tools rolled out, again, without, they're not coming from clinical, they're not coming down from Aaron Beck and saying, here's this tried and true thing I've been working on for 2 decades. This is not some Gottman, like, pull your favorite person. This is not coming from our world. It's coming from a different world,
Mhm.
and they don't have the same lens. So I think that we're in a really good time that there should be a lot of caution.
Definitely. Yeah. I agree. And there's also a lot of possibility to help humanity too. So it's it's very interesting. I don't know how to decouple these things from,
Mm,
you know, capitalism or corporations or economic
right.
interest. It's like how does that happen? Like, I don't even know what that looks like. Could there be a
Yeah.
nonprofit that provides some sort of AI, like ethically, like well done, private, secure AI therapy for the masses that's not
Mm,
about, stock prices and providing returns for the stakeholders? I don't know.
mhm.
Could that exist? I think maybe it should.
It's an interesting idea, because I would like to think that what's happening in our culture too is like a return to the earth, like we're getting so sucked into technology while the earth is like
Hmm.
burning in flames. There's like some real practical things of like, it's actually best for humans to like go outside, get sunlight, have a
Right.
conversation, feel the breeze, get some grass on your toes, and I think that I don't want to get so lost in the dependency of technology that we're missing what makes us human beings.
Those are solid interventions. And hopefully they will be for a long time, right?
I hope so, right? If there's grass left and
Yeah, right. Have you read the book or seen the movie Ready Player One? I keep thinking about that.
Oh, really?
Oh,
I haven't. I
yeah.
do know of it.
It's fascinating. Years and years ago, I had a client who was obsessed with it, and I
Uh,
had to eventually read the book just so
yeah.
that I could have the conversations in the room. And I was
Uh-huh.
glad that I did because it's future, sci-fi, and it paints a picture of a world where, yeah, unfortunately, the Earth is decimated and it's not really inhabitable. So everybody kind of lives inside of their augmented, not even augmented, virtual reality,
Uh-huh.
inside, wearing the goggles, wearing the full suit that gives you all the sensations of being like a
Oh my
human in a
goodness.
space, in a virtual space. Yeah, I recommend reading it. Well, actually, maybe it might not be your jam, but it is an interesting look into
Oh,
hopefully not a real future, but what it could be, you know?
yeah. I think something that gives me hope about humanity is the benefits that there's always two sides to everything. And I think there's an intention in that, that it keeps us grounded as people
Hmm.
to not go. I mean, of course, people will always be on the fringe, like outside layers, but there's always going to be this like, yes, tech, yes, grass, and so the hope is that that keeps us balanced in some way to be evolving and also considering tradition and the things that are
Right.
good for humanity.
I'm with you on that. I want my feet in the grass with my with my AI goggles on. No, I'm kidding. I want all of it. Yes. No, I agree. I agree. Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day because where was I? I was hiking with my wife, I think, and I was just thinking about how my whole nervous system is just the most calm when
Mm,
I'm like in the woods or
yeah.
in nature alone or just with a few people that I like and trust. Like that's my favorite
Yeah.
place to be. Other than that,
Mm,
other than in front of a computer, of course. Couldn't be very much different, but I like those two places.
yeah. Yeah. Therapy, I think, can be a really sacred journey. And I
Hmm.
don't want the sacredness of someone's personal healing to be taken out of the equation. And I don't know how a computer can really provide that.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective. Yeah, I do. I hope you continue to write on LinkedIn and have viral posts because I think we do need multiple different voices and perspectives, hopefully to get us where we need to be safely. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in therapy, there's so many gatekeepers, before clinicians can be clinicians. And I think the same should be true when it comes to any new intervention. And that's what's not happening. It makes me think a lot of
Hmm.
like Theranos, like here you are messing with people's real lives. This is beta. None of this is
Yeah.
like, truly the on the other side, they figured this out product. It's all in progress. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's wild. It's wild that people are getting away with it. And I think at some
Oh
point
my
people
goodness.
might, the lawsuits will come and
Sure.
we'll see what happens.
There's still checks and balances in the world and in
That's
our
right.
industry. Yeah,
That's right.
definitely. The tricky part is that none of us know the answers really, and we're all trying to figure it out while the thing is happening, which is not the best place to be in, of course, right? But that's kind of where we find ourselves.
Right.
We're
Which
like,
ideally it shouldn't be like that. Not when it comes to healthcare.
mm-hmm,
So you have
mm-hmm,
trials, and all this should be done in a trial somewhere, not on
right,
in real life.
right.
And that's what's being missed. And I'm literally based in the Silicon Valley, so this is all my jam. Like
Mm-hmm.
literally my clients are working on tech
It's in
projects,
the
and
air.
it is in the air. And so the whole motto is move fast and break things, and that's
Mm-hmm.
how Theranos got into such big trouble and why Elizabeth Holmes is behind bars, is because when it comes to healthcare, that's not the motto. The motto is do no harm. That
Right.
is the first tried and true thing that we all have an oath that we commit to when we enter this field. And so
Yeah.
I don't see a way around that right now.
Do no harm. That is a very, very good reminder. It makes me think. I watched a couple interviews recently. One was with Johnny Ive, one of the principal designers at Apple for many, many years. And it also makes me think about Steve Jobs. I read his biography years ago. Fascinating. And he wouldn't let his kids have iPods
Exactly. Exactly.
and the devices that his company was creating. He wouldn't let them have unfettered access to those things.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this interview, Johnny Ive was talking about how the people who have created certain technologies, whether it's social media or devices or whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
they should be even if the intention was good and the negative consequences were not intentional, they should actually take some accountability for the results of
Sure.
how that has played out.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was fascinating. Not that a lot of technologists or, people creating these things will take responsibility unless they
Sure.
need to be put behind bars, right? But there's a lot of unintended consequences to the things that we've created in the last 30 to 40 years.
And that's actually pretty common in the Silicon Valley, that people that
Mm-hmm.
work on these products don't let their kids use the
Isn't that
products.
interesting? Yeah. Yeah.
So
What does
that's
that tell you?
yeah, absolutely. So I'm very protective of our field in that way. And maybe it's because I'm so close to it here that I see a
Mm-hmm.
little bit behind the curtain. I know
Mm-hmm.
how these things are talked about. I know enough about VCs, like
Mm-hmm.
the VC mecca of the world is just, 10 minutes from my house. And
Right.
so I think it allows me to have a really healthy skepticism and to say to clinicians, like, just wait, don't adopt these things. If you hear something being said, look and see who paid for that to be
Mm-hmm.
said or who is saying that. What
Mm-hmm.
interest do they have? And don't abandon our own post for someone else's vision or their pocketbooks.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you happen to be a tech founder in the Silicon Valley or anywhere, maybe Austin, Texas, please look up Candice and go see her for therapy to
That's
get
right. Or for
to get your thoughts
consulting
sorted,
for
or for
your
consulting. Yes, pay her lots of
company.
money for consulting. That's what you should do.
Yeah, which is,
Let's.
it's wild because I've done more and more consulting recently, which I like to do. However, my experience so far has been I say, here's the thing that I think,
Mm-hmm.
that is not in alignment with clinicians or mental health. And I feel like the response is often, oh, that's so interesting. Okay, cool. And then people do whatever they were going to do anyways. And so that's so
Yes.
fascinating to me is you have business minded individuals or purely tech individuals creating all of these
Mm-hmm.
products.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
And they want to
sticking
check
to
a
my legal
box.
pad
Yeah.
and I try to be as minimal with some of this stuff as possible.
Well, I'm glad that you're trying. I'm glad that you're being consulted, and I hope that some of those folks will take your guidance because, yeah, it is important. I can't imagine a medical device company never consulting a doctor, and
I
creating something like
know.
that just wouldn't make sense, right?
No, I mean, my husband is literally in medical device. And
Is that right?
so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, right, they do surgeries and they watch and see how the device actually performs.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's a chief medical officer that's a part of the company. And
Right. That's the way it's
yeah.
done.
And
Yeah.
they have to go through the FDA, right? There's all these processes. I think therapy needs more regulatory systems. That would be my, if I could talk to anyone in a high place right now, that would be it is
Mm-hmm.
create a body of people who
Right.
can go in and create the standards and legislation around some of what's happening.
And probably slow down too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of this stuff needs to be scaled back. And ChatGPT needs to be able to say, I'm not a therapist. And that is something that I see as missing.
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT should not be giving health care opinions. And so, yeah, there's the aspect of this that pretty tricky stuff.
It is.
And then
Well,
it's
this
no
is.
wonder why people don't think that there are lines, right? And coaches feel like, oh, I can do therapy. I can be a, trauma informed coach and use all the skills that you're doing and talk about neurobiology and what's the harm.
Yeah. The lines are blurred when they shouldn't be, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm disappointed that we didn't come to the answers that everybody was waiting for, but we certainly had an interesting
What
conversation.
were the answers? Were there answers to be provided?
Well, I'm just saying that we haven't yet solved all the problems.
Mm. Yeah, I think the problems to be solved right now are be cautious. Be cautious
Yes.
with the tech. Be discerning. Go back to what you learned in grad school.
Right.
Think about, the material that you use to pass your board exams. Use
Mm-hmm.
that to be making these decisions.
Yeah. Law and ethics,
Hmm.
intuition, know who you are as a clinician, and then share that as confidently as you can with the people who need you,
Exactly.
because you matter. I like to say that to mental health providers. We need you. We need
Absolutely.
you to not burn out, and we need you to stay in the field, if
Yes,
if that is at all possible.
that's
Stay in the
right.
field because we need your voice and your gifts.
And I think this should be the time when, if mental health is so important and all these companies are seeing the value in it, we're the
Right.
ones doing the work. And so this is the time to feel like, don't give in. Trust that people are looking for a therapist. You're a therapist. These companies aren't creating
Definitely.
new therapists.
Yeah.
They're just reallocating the work that's already there. So I think that's where private practice can stay strong right now, or, you know, trying to get a higher rate with the insurance company, or if you do use a platform to try to get the best rate possible and feel
Yeah,
confident in that.
for sure. So thank you so much for this. And where
Yeah.
can people go to find out more about you and the work that you do and potentially pay you lots of money for consulting?
Yes. So LinkedIn is my main social media platform, which is Candice Thompson, LMFT. I'm sure there's some dashes in there. And my website is my full name, www.candice with an I, Thompson with a P.com.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for your time.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
That's it for today. Thanks so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and hit the subscribe button to make sure you never miss an episode. If you're looking for more personalized help, you can reach us through productivetherapist.com. Thanks so much for listening. We are Productive Therapist, and this is the podcast that helps therapists get more done and have more fun.